You know, there comes a moment in life when silence stops being noble. When biting your tongue, holding it all in, hoping the storm passes, that just doesn't work anymore. And instead, it starts to eat you alive. That's the place Johnny Depp found himself in. After years of being misrepresented, misunderstood, and misjudged, he finally stood up and said something many people are afraid to say. Not just in Hollywood, but in everyday life. He said, "I don't regret it." He said, it had gone far enough. Think about that. After everything, after the headlines, the finger-pointing, the social media storms, the memes, the late-night talk show jabs, the jobs he lost, after all that, he's not sitting around with bitterness in his voice. He's not angry. He's not seeking revenge. He just says, no regrets. Because some truths are more important than comfort. Some battles are worth fighting, even when it's easier to walk away. But let's go back. Because understanding why this moment matters so much requires knowing where it all started. Johnny Depp wasn't always the quiet, haunted figure we've come to associate with tabloid drama. There was a time, years ago, when he was the golden boy of quirky Hollywood. Every role he touched turned to gold. He was Captain Jack Sparrow. Edward Scissorhands. The Mad Hatter. He wasn't just playing characters, he became them. He was known for disappearing into his roles, for bringing a kind of raw depth that you just didn't see very often. He wasn't loud. He wasn't showy. He had this strange, quiet magnetism that drew people in. And then came the headlines. When his relationship with Amber Heard went public, at first, it seemed like another Hollywood romance, two actors, glamorous, unpredictable, passionate. But quickly, it unraveled. What followed was a flood of accusations. Stories started surfacing. Amber made claims. Some were subtle. Some were shocking. But they all painted a very specific, very damaging picture of Johnny Depp. And for a long time, he didn't say a word. He didn't fight back in the media. He didn't tweet out denials. He didn't go on talk shows to defend himself. He chose silence. Maybe it was to protect his family. Maybe he thought the truth would rise on its own. Maybe he believed in waiting. But silence, especially in today's world, is a dangerous thing. Because when you stay quiet, people start writing your story for you. And the longer you wait, the louder the false narratives become. Johnny watched as people turned their backs on him. Big movie studios pulled out of contracts. Advertisers walked away. Friends grew distant. His reputation, a reputation built over decades, was reduced to soundbites and scandal. Can you imagine that? To live a life where every mistake, every rumor, every twisted version of the truth becomes front-page news? To watch yourself become a villain in a story you didn't write? It's crushing. But it happens. Not just in Hollywood. It happens in families. In workplaces. In friendships. One day, someone paints you in the worst possible light, and suddenly, your silence isn't seen as dignity. It's seen as guilt. That's where Johnny was. And that's why, when he finally said, it had gone far enough, it wasn't just about a courtroom battle. It was about reclaiming something that had been stolen from him, his voice. In 2022, when the trial began, it didn't just shake Hollywood. It shook the entire internet. People picked sides. Social media became a war zone. Clips from the courtroom were shared millions of times. Some turned it into entertainment. But others really listened. And what they heard wasn't the rage of a man seeking revenge. It was the heartbreak of a man trying to tell the truth. You could hear it in his voice, the way it cracked when he described the pain. The long pauses. The way his eyes dropped when he talked about losing his career. It wasn't performative. It was raw. Unfiltered. Human. And when he won that trial, when the jury ruled in his favor, it wasn't some triumphant, chest-beating victory. It was quiet. Just like him. A quiet, exhausted sigh. Like someone who had finally been able to exhale after holding his breath for years. And even now, long after the courtroom lights have dimmed and the headlines have faded, he's not dancing in celebration. He's not gloating. He's not dragging Amber Heard through more mud. He's doing something most people didn't expect. He's disappearing. Not into darkness, but into peace. He's moved to a small, sleepy village in France. No paparazzi. No red carpets. No interviews. Just fields, paints, music. He's playing guitar again. He's painting in the mornings. Drinking coffee on quiet balconies. Laughing with locals. Reclaiming the parts of himself that fame had swallowed whole. And that tells you everything you need to know about who Johnny really is. He didn't go through that trial to win in the court of public opinion. He went through it because it was the only way to find peace. To clear the fog. To say, once and for all, this is who I am. Believe it or don't, but this is my truth. And that truth? It came at a cost. Because behind every headline, there was a man who couldn't sleep. A man who watched his children read lies about him online. A man who had to walk into a courtroom not just to defend himself legally, but emotionally. Personally. Imagine looking at your daughter, knowing the world is telling her that her father is a monster. And you can't just hug her and make it go away. You have to prove yourself. You have to go to war with words and hope that, in the end, truth survives. That's what Johnny did. And when he says he has no regrets, it's not because the battle was painless. It's because the pain had purpose. He said, it had gone far enough. That's such a loaded sentence. It says, I waited. I endured. I gave chances. But now, I choose me. And in a world that often punishes people for speaking their truth, that kind of clarity is rare. It's powerful. But you know what's even more powerful? What he didn't say. He didn't lash out. He didn't name-call. He didn't run to every tabloid. He just said what needed to be said, and then walked away. That takes strength. Real strength. Because anyone can scream. Anyone can throw stones. But it takes a different kind of courage to quietly walk through fire and come out on the other side with grace. Johnny Depp walked through fire. And now, he's not asking anyone to worship him. He's not trying to relaunch some massive Hollywood comeback. He's not trying to erase what happened. He's just, living. And maybe that's the most inspiring part of all. Because we all know people who have been misunderstood. Misjudged. Hurt. Maybe you're one of them. Maybe you've been through your own personal trial. Maybe not in a courtroom, but in your family, in your job, in your community. Maybe you've had people talk behind your back. Spread things that weren't true. Twist your actions. And maybe, just like Johnny, you stayed quiet. You hoped the truth would float to the surface on its own. You hoped people would see your heart without you having to explain yourself. And maybe they didn't. So here you are, still carrying that weight. Still wondering if your silence is protecting your peace, or costing you everything. If that's you, this story is for you. Johnny's story is your reminder that you're allowed to speak. You're allowed to say, enough. You're allowed to take back your name. And you don't have to scream it. You can whisper it. You can paint it. You can sing it. You can write it down in a letter no one ever reads. But you deserve to tell your side. Because silence isn't always strength. Sometimes, it's survival. And when you're ready, your truth matters. Even if it shakes the world a little. Even if it costs you something. Even if people roll their eyes or laugh or walk away. Let them. Because at the end of the day, your peace is more important than their opinion. Johnny Depp learned that the hard way. He lost roles. He lost relationships. He lost time. But he found himself. And now, years later, he's sitting on a quiet porch in the French countryside, painting, smiling, living. Not because he won. But because he finished the fight. That's all he ever wanted. Not applause. Not revenge. Just peace. And that's something we can all learn from. Now, before we go, let me leave you with one question. It's simple. But it's real. Have you ever reached that moment? The moment where you realized something had gone far enough. That you couldn't stay quiet anymore. That your peace was more important than your pride? If you have, what did you do? What did you learn? Drop a comment. Let it out. There's strength in sharing. And maybe someone out there needs your story the same way you needed Johnny's. And hey, if this video touched you, helped you, moved you even a little, don't forget to like it. It helps more than you know. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories that go beyond the headlines. The real ones. The quiet ones. The ones that make you feel seen. Because in the end, we all just want one thing. To be heard. To be understood. To be at peace. And sometimes, peace begins with a sentence as simple as this. It had gone far enough.